Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this afternoon's Experience UK webinar about the benefits of doing business internationally for UK companies who are working in the experience economy. So today's roundtable webinar will explore the benefits of international exporting. And during the session, we're going to look at international exports from the perspective of technology, from the perspective of product exporting, the perspective of brand licensing, exporting professional services, working with arts and culture organisations, themed entertainments and public arts. And we've got a stunning panel for you today. We have Terry Monkton, who is yet to join us, but will be joining us shortly. CEO of Simworx and a regional export champion for the West Midlands. We have Matt Barton, chairperson and owner of Seventh Sense, who managed the great honour of the 2023 King's Award for Enterprise in International Trade. We have Ngaio Harding-Hill, head of attractions and live experiences at Aardman. We have Julie Fizsimmins, founder and director of Lodestar. We have Steve Deering, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Direct Access, Charlie Langhorne, co-founder and MD at Wild in Art, and Jim Broughton, who is a deeply experienced culture and heritage consultant who's worked in pretty much most continents across the world, I believe, and heading up some incredible arts and cultural projects. So welcome to everybody, and thanks to all of those who have joined us for this session. We'll take forward the panel, asking each person to come in one by one, and if you back home and in the office listening have questions for people as we go, please can you put them into the chat function, and we'll take those right at the end, and we plan to leave about 5 minutes for Q&As. Now, I've just seen in the chat that Terry has joined us, but I can't see him on stage, so I'm just going to do a little bit of technical admin. Terry, I think there's a button on the bottom left which says join stage. If you can press that, hopefully you'll appear by magic. I'm just going to let that happen for a second.
I felt like Dynamo then.
There we go. That's fantastic. That's the perfect entrance. Wonderful. Thank you, Terry, so much. And welcome. And just to say that Ian will be in 1 second putting your presentation up onto the screen, and you'll be able to drive it from where you are. But any problems, instructions to Ian, and he'll be able to drive it from where he is. So first of all, let's welcome Terry Monkton, CEO of Simworx and regional export champion for the West Midlands, to start by giving us an overview of his experience of export from a Simworx perspective. Welcome, Terry.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for welcoming me into the panel, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. So I'm the CEO of a company called Simworx. If I can, okay, yeah, slide on one. Simworx, we're based in the West Midlands. We are designer and manufacturer of a range of immersive media attractions for theme parks, museums, zoos, aquariums, fan entertainment centres, amongst many of the types of venue. And we've been fortunate enough to work with many clients all around the world. A few of those are listed there. And thankfully, during our time doing such a project, we've managed to pick up a few awards. We do like to try and get an award. It's pretty good for all the staff and morale, and it's always nice evening when you get recognition from one of the attractions or business services that you've managed to do. And we take no shame whatsoever in boldly putting those out to our prospective customers. And as mentioned, we have installations across the world, which I'll come onto in a bit more detail. So some key facts about Simworx. We supply and design what we call immersive media attractions. So it's combining motion simulation technology, whether that be flying theatres, dark rides, special effects cinemas, motion simulators, with audio-visual technology, where we try and put people right in the heart of the story to experience something that they can't do at home. We have developed over our time a range of 14 different products which cover a whole variety of different attraction venues. So we have a bunch of smaller products designed for the family entertainment centre market. We've done for projects for companies like Cartoon Network, Mattel, National Geographic, etc. And then we have bigger products which we predominantly put into theme parks, and the whole varying range of sizes theme parks from 250,000 visitors per year to over 6 million visitors per year. And we try and make everything scalable so we can accommodate those different throughput requirements. So we've been fortunate to work with some really big brands and IPs like Marvel, DreamWorks, a few DreamWorks projects with Kung Fu Panda and Shrek's Adventure, Angry Birds, National Geographic, Cartoon Network, Ferrari, amongst some of the brands who've been really fortunate enough to work alongside in bringing their stories and IPs to life into various theme parks around the world. And fortunately, those efforts have led to a significant amount of exports. As at last week, because thankfully the number's gone up this week, but we were at 115 million of export orders in recent years. So the point of today's presentation is to show that the market that we're looking at, it's far beyond these shores. If you can expand your horizon to embrace the opportunities that the world presents with the various support that is uniquely available to companies within the United Kingdom, the worldwide market really is your stage, and there's opportunities there for every business to try and maximise their potential. And so that 115 million of export orders, we've got 105 installations that are around the world. So obviously we didn't decide, export orders didn't just come to us. We put a bit of effort into our strategy to try and ensure that we were successful in winning overseas sales. So there are a number of things that we did within Simworx to try and help accelerate that. And so we started to do what we call location-specific PR. So we contacted local associations, local magazines or social media groups that were prevalent in our industry in the countries that we were targeting, and had sort of like local language advertisements placed in those areas. Social media, of course, it's a massive thing across all of our businesses. But again, we made effort where necessary to try and do those posts into in-country social media like WeChat in China, etc., where we did sort of like bilingual posts where we do an English and a post in the language of that target territory. And it's always a brilliant platform that's really low cost to get your name and company products and services out there. Everybody in the world uses LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, or X as it's now called, etc. And they're just an amazing platform to really put your company out into new territories. And we did, across the team, we've done so many networking events, working a lot with the Department of Business and Trade, where they would do trade missions, introducing British companies to overseas markets. Lots of meet the buyer type meetings, etc., which were really quite invaluable for us, and also similar overseas events with other trade associations that we're part of, like IARPA, TA, etc. And we really invested a lot of money in our overseas presence for exhibitions. We put in a sales team which pretty much covers the world, through using either staff directly employed by Simworx or utilising regional agents who will work on perhaps a retainer and a commission on successful sales. And we do probably 5 or 6 trade shows around the world each year. And that for us as a business is a real core source of our inquiries. We do make a big effort. We do try and arrange as many meetings as we can. DBT is great for helping, assisting with those, so that when we do these trade shows, we're typically back to back with meetings. So it takes out the risk, companies that turn up and just hope that prospective customers walk up the booth. That's really not the way that this is done. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody in detail about a successful trade show strategy. And then, of course, it's all very well doing things on social media, trade shows, but when prospective clients are looking to spend significant amounts of money, they will expect you to go and see them. So you and your team will have to be prepared in some instances to travel, go and meet with the client, understand the stories they want to tell, really for them to trust you. And we've hosted lots of clients to our site here in Simworx. So we made a big effort really to go and see as many potential clients as we possibly could. And on the previous one, even if it means I have to dress up as a character out of Mario Kart and go on the back of a motorbike to go and see a client, you've just got to do what needs to be done. And then the other thing that Simworx has done is that we really do promote the fact that we're a great British company. It really acts as a beacon for high quality standards, high safety standards to any prospective client overseas. And that's something that both myself and my sales team, we have splashed across our sales proposals, and we feel that it gives us a really good USP when we talk to clients. Probably a little bit less relevant to today, but as Emily mentioned, I do some work for the DBT as an export champion, where I will go and talk to companies and encourage them about the potential opportunities from exporting. So there's lots of things I do there that I don't think I need to go into detail there, but I'm very happy to speak to anyone afterwards if they want any help, support or advice about the support that DBT and other associations will provide them to be successful in their overseas sales. So Emily, that's it from me, and obviously I'm welcome to any questions at a convenient time during the presentation.
Thank you so much, Terry. Hopefully you can hear me, if not see me. Somebody needs to enable my camera for some reason. Anyway, can you hear me okay, everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry. There we go. Brilliant. And can I just ask you, do you have if I know that many of the people joining us today are considering export for the first time, for a company looking at beginning to work in international export for the first time, what would be your one top tip in terms of a kind of strategic approach?
Really sort of market research beforehand, so don't go into it blindly. There are lots of regions around the world that we would call sort of like hot, where there are new attractions or experiences being developed. So we tend to focus efforts a lot there, and we learn about those through like Experience UK is just brilliant for knowing what's going on around the industry in the world, and through DBT, through other associations. So one is definitely do the market research and focus your efforts into those target markets where you know demand exists. And two is the trade shows. It's yes, a lot of sales are done through online meetings such as this and Zoom and Teams, but in my experience, it's meeting people, getting a level of engagement with them, and understanding their requirements. And I think those things are done face to face. Once you've done the first couple of meetings, then you can do things online by Teams and Zooms. But yeah, it's be prepared to travel and go and see your customer and understand the market.
Thank you so much, Terry. That was a really brilliant introduction and brilliant insight. Please stay with us, because I can see people already typing in the chat. So obviously it's spurred some thoughts. Now, I'd love to invite Matt Barton onto the stage to who is chairperson and owner of Seventh Sense, and 2023 King's Award winner for international enterprise in international trade. So welcome, Matt, and we look forward to hearing your export perspective.
Thanks, Emily. Well, whilst I'm waiting for the presentation to come up on screen, I'm pleased to report that it's very aligned with what Terry's just told you all. So hopefully we're saying similar things, which is good because we're in a similar industry. So first of all, just tell you a quick bit about Seventh Sense and then our journey into export. As Emily mentioned, we're very pleased to receive the King's Award for Enterprise International Trade last year. It was actually presented to us just Friday just gone, so we actually now have it in the trophy cabinet. But it's that award was specifically about how much export we've done as a business, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now and where we're placed in the market. So hopefully I can progress my slides. Apparently I can't. Ian, are you able to? Oh, there we go. Okay. So a quick bit about Seventh Sense first. So we are actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We were established in 2004. Software and technology company. So we specialize in media servers, pixel management, show control for large video-based experiences, primarily theme parks, museums, education centres, theatres, all sorts of live events, all sorts of venues around the world. Our focus is to entertain, educate and enlighten, and we do that from our offices around the world. So our headquarters is here in the UK. We have an office down near Brighton, one in London, and then we have offices in Orlando and in Burbank in the US. We also sell through a network of integrators, partners and consultant friends. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, as I think that's quite relevant to the nature of the export side of our business. And really we focus, similar to Terry and Simworx, we focus and we are very proud of our reputation for quality product, and that's an area that customers keep coming back to us for, is our dedication to quality and support. So quickly about me. So as Emily mentioned, I'm chairperson and owner of Seventh Sense. I'm also president-elect for the Themed Entertainment Association, or TEA, as Terry has already mentioned that association. My background is in technical development and operations management for delivering systems for the types of environments I talked about earlier: education, museums, universities, themed entertainment, all sorts of anywhere where there's big displays with lots of information being displayed to an audience. Also, as I mentioned, Seventh Sense is 20 years old. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk you through this chart, but this is just a few of the highlights of our 20 years. That brings us up to today. But just looking towards the end there, a few kind of things to highlight is we opened our offices in Florida in 2018. That was having spent a number of years exporting to the US and feeling that we were doing a good job in our exports, but not being there in person was having an impact on our ability to support our clients. And so in 2018, we made the strategic decision to have a presence in the US, and we haven't looked back since. One other point just to mention is in 2020, we actually landed our biggest ever project, and in 2023 that project opened, and that's the Sphere in Las Vegas, which has had a fair bit of media attention. So I won't go into the details on it, but you know, in terms of an export project, that was certainly a big one for us, and had a big impact on the company and indeed our industry. This is just a summary of just a few of the companies we work with. Obviously, there are many more, but these are some of the big ones around the world and also based here in the UK. A map very similar to the one Terry showed, I think, of where we have things installed. So yeah, we are a global company, and we've been exporting all around the world for the majority of our 20 years. So just to get into some of the details about our journey, and again, I think I'm going to echo quite a lot of what Terry said here, but first I'm going to put up a chart about our sales spread and just talk about why some of the strategies that we've applied to export have served us well. So what's clear from this chart is the US makes up a big part of our international market. Also, what's quite clear from this chart is the EU and the UK are relatively small in percentage for us in our sales generally. But in 2015, which is, by the way, when I became an owner of the company, when we bought out the original founders, we were heavily dependent on the US market. As you can see, Europe was very, very small for us. The UK was reasonable, but not huge. And we were just starting to grow our business in China. But what's not clear from this chart is that portion of our sales in China in 15-16 was all one project. It was actually the new Disney park in Shanghai that was opening. And what was clear to us at that time was we really needed to diversify our market spread. We were too reliant on one area, and that was the US. So we whilst the chart doesn't particularly show it well, we really only had one project in China. We had one large project rest of world, and then lots of projects in the US. So we were too reliant on one area. So we made a company strategy in 2015 that we were going to diversify our market. I'm very glad we did, because as we all know, in 2020, things kind of got turned on their head by a little pandemic. And when that happened, something strange happened in that things closed down and reopened at different times. And had we still been reliant on one market area, had we been reliant on the US, the speed at which everything got put on hold and closed down at that time probably would have pushed us under. But by then we diversified, we had more business rest of the world. And again, the chart doesn't show this very well, because I should have done this by number of projects rather than revenue. But actually we had a lot more projects around the rest of the world. We had a lot of projects in China. And although China was obviously the first to be hit with COVID, it was also the first to start going into recovery, or at least short-term recovery. And so whilst the US shut down, we actually were sustained by lots of business coming in from China. And that was as a result of that strategic decision. Now, further down the line, China then really kind of shut down again, but more to do with geopolitics and other things, and that ongoing damage done by COVID. But by then, the US was coming back online. We saw projects reopening. And of course, as mentioned, we landed the Sphere, which was a very big project for us. So the point of this story really is that it was so important to us not to just focus on one area for our export. We had diversified. We had a lot of work coming in from all around the world. So as one country was impacted by politics or by the pandemic, there were other opportunities for us elsewhere, and that's really what saw us through, to be honest. The final point to mention here is at the moment, the orange element on this chart shows rest of world, but we're actually seeing a huge part of that is the GCC countries, particularly Saudi Arabia, but also Dubai and also UAE. The opportunity for growth in that area is huge. So we're working on that a lot. So with that, I'll go into my top tips for export. First one, exactly as Terry said, is you've got to be there. things like this, webinars and Teams and Zoom and all of those tools, they're great for a purpose, but the personal relationships are so important, particularly in our industry, I think. But it's so important to be there and get to know the people you're working with. So being prepared to travel, get on a plane, spend some time and quality time with people is so important. And we've seen that time and time again. Know your place. So, and what I mean by that is know your place in the supply chain. So going back to the pandemic, a weird thing happened to us in the pandemic in that when everything else was shutting down, our orders were still coming in, and it would have been very easy to be complacent. But fortunately, we knew our place, and the reason our orders were coming in was because when the pandemic hit, the first thing that got shelved were all the projects in development. But those whose budgets had already been approved and assigned, they carried on spending. So they carried on buying the things they were already going to buy, because they knew they had to open as soon as they could after the pandemic. So for us, that meant that the Universal project in Beijing, the new park, they still bought all of the equipment they needed for that park in the midst of a pandemic. So for us, that was great during the pandemic. But what we saw is a delayed reaction to all those projects that were put on hold at the beginning of the pandemic. That meant they were delayed when they were ready to order. So we saw approximately a 2-year delay in the financial and sales impact of the pandemic. And we only saw that because we knew our place in the supply chain. So that's my tip of the day for that. Find the experts and use them. Again, Terry's already said this, but I absolutely back this up. There's trade associations. There's obviously Experience UK. There's the TEA that Terry's a member of, and as I'm the incoming president for next year. There's lots of others, IAPA, lots of other associations out there that can really help with export. There's so much knowledge out there. And so many people willing to share it. I urge you to use and use those people and work with those people, because it really does help, and be part of that community and network. Also, find a good shipper, find a good company to work with who will help you navigate the hurdles of international shipping. It's a big deal, and it is complex. And it changes for every single country you're going to ship to. And Brexit hasn't helped. So, find a good shipper who can really give you guidance and help you if you're exporting goods and shipping. And finally, distribution partners. So, Terry talked about social media, and we obviously have our own social media channels, but we also advertise around the world by working with our distribution partners, who then have their own social media channels. So everything we post as Seventh Sense, they then repost and in local language, in local tools, and so leveraging those distribution partners really helps boost our sales. So and again, sorry to reference the pandemic once more, but if it weren't for our distribution partner in China, we wouldn't have been able to install one of our biggest projects in China, because it all happened right in the middle of lockdown. And because we had worked so closely with them, we trained them in how to use and install our products. They were able to operate on our behalf when we were all locked at home. So utilize those distribution partners and find good ones. And if they're not good, don't stick with them. We've had partners that weren't doing the job, and we prevaricated over parting ways, but we were very glad when we did. So find good ones, and when you find them, stick with them. And finally, diversify. So don't rely on any one geographic region. Sadly, geopolitics is pretty fluctuates a lot at the moment. There's a lot going on around the world, and so you don't want to be reliant on any one region, because you never know what might happen tomorrow. And that's my top tips. So thank you very much. And if you would like to get in touch with us, please do so. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Matt. What a fantastic presentation, and so much resonance with Terry's. I have a feeling there are going to be some very common strands from everybody speaking today. Thank you so much. And just a reminder to those listening, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat, and I'm sure Terry, Matt and our other panelists will help answer those at the end. So I'd now love to introduce Ngaio Harding-Hill, who is Head of Attractions and Live Experiences at Aardman, to share her experiences of export from the Aardman perspective. Welcome, Ngaio.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Emily. Hello, everybody. So Aardman Studios have been producing animated content for almost 50 years from our Bristol-based studios. And the past and future success of our studios has always been based on selling our content globally. So I wanted to start with a quick overview of some of our products. So hopefully some of these, or many of these, are familiar to you. Our content is sold in over 170 territories globally, and international distribution sales have enabled us to invest in continuing to build our brands, to develop new IP, to produce more content, and to diversify into interactive production and game production, as well as enabling us to run a profitable studio. We also have a creative services team who create commercial and short form content for third parties on a kind of work for hire base globally as well, which is a significant part of our income that comes kind of through international sales. I thought I'd break up the chatting a little bit and show you some pretty pictures which show you the diversity of the products and content that we export. Ian, if you could play the video.
Step on it, Gromit.
Thank you. Hopefully go back to the presentation. So hopefully there was some, there we go. So hopefully there were some surprises as well as some familiar content that you saw there. So to deepen and expand our brand reach and engagement with global audiences and markets, we take a 360-degree approach that includes working with our international partners across these 6 touch points. As brand owners working in a global export market, we need to constantly make sure we connect with our audiences at every touch point and at every gateway. And the experience economy is central to this. So over the last 10 years plus, we've developed a global portfolio of licensed attraction, exhibition, stage show and live event partnerships that have enabled us to achieve this. I kind of think, again, it's a similar pattern to one we've seen so far, interestingly, I guess, for this economy. A significant part of our export success has come from working with experienced agents, particularly agents that have a LBE background. We have a wide program of merchandise agents, but we find our kind of key successes in the experience economy have come from those agents that really understand this area of business, particularly in territories like Japan, which can be quite challenging for a lot of IP owners to kind of penetrate. And having really kind of successful, driven and effective agents in the territory have really helped us create opportunities, and them acting as our kind of eyes and ears on the ground as well is invaluable in continuing and constantly making sure that brand awareness is ever present within the region. As challenges we've encountered, I think the main challenge within the experience economy that we've come across is operators and developers that lack experience working with brands and understanding the real value of brand partnerships and how to successfully develop them. In certain territories, for example, kind of China, we've had to do a lot of work kind of establishing partnerships that really are based on this shared understanding, and kind of in the early years of trying to establish opportunities in that area, there was a kind of a real naivety that we're trying to navigate, or a motive that just didn't align with our brand values. For example, if they were kind of operators that, you know, for the sake of planning permission wanted to have an IP attached to their project, that was a kind of a hurdle that was very kind of present in the region kind of 8-10 years ago. That's improving, but it's still something to be wary of. So our top tip is doing due diligence at the start of the partnership, and, you know, as much and as extensively as possible. You know, particularly with attraction partnerships, these are long-term relationships, so you have to make sure that you're starting off with the confidence that you have shared values and objectives, so that, you know, you don't hit unnecessarily hurdles as the partnership develops. And the most successful partnerships that we have are without doubt those that started with that absolute alignment of values and ambition at the beginning of the project. So the experience sector enables us to both extend brand engagement, but also vitally in key territories, it does offer a unique gateway. So traditionally, content was always the gateway that we expected audiences to come to our brands, whereas over the last kind of 10 years, by developing business globally in the experience economy, it has really significantly shifted the kind of dial. And now there is a significant percentage of audiences that are introduced to our brands through events, exhibitions, stage shows and experiences, that then drives them back to engaging with content through the variety of different platforms that we now distribute across, you know, kind of classic broadcast to streaming platforms to digital and online. So it really is a vital and increasingly vital area of Aardman's business in terms of doing kind of 360 business in brand development. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Ngaio. Again, fantastic insights, and again, very interesting to hear it from a brand perspective alongside the technology perspectives shared by Terry and Matt. So thank you so much. In terms of just to reference the question that I asked Terry, actually, your one top tip for a company thinking of moving into this space for the first time, who've maybe been UK based for so long.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like an echo of both Matt and Terry, but it's going there and meeting and understanding. There is nothing, you know, for all of us in this industry, but there is, I mean, you know, from brand owners, there's a lot you can achieve by kind of going and visiting attractions, particularly if it's operators that are already operating. If it's new developers, it's slightly more challenging. So even more reasons to kind of go over there and meet them face to face and have those kind of detailed discussions, and dedicate time. And it's much easier to do that when you kind of have them, you know, face to face in your audience. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where you just do, you know, a lot. When we were first starting working in territories like China, going out and spending time there is a really efficient way of doing things. You have the initial cost of kind of, you know, the travel and getting there, but actually the amount you save in the long run by doing that work in real life is invaluable.
Thank you so much, Ngaio. That's wonderful, and really great to hear commonality across the speakers, because I think it certainly gives me confidence as a small business owner to think that's the right route. So thank you so much. Now, be very delighted to welcome Julie Fizsimmins, who is the founder and director of Lodestar, to join us on stage and to share her perspectives on managing international exports. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Emily, and thanks, Ian. I do echo quite a lot of what your other speakers say, but which is a good thing. I'll tell you a little bit about Lodestar to begin with, and then maybe who we work with, and then some of our top tips. A Lodestar, it's a guiding light. The North Star is a Lodestar. So we are an organisation which is international strategy and business growth. There's no point having a strategy if you don't grow your business. We're knowledge and network driven. We've been in the market 25 years, and our focus is research, consult, review, plan, deliver. And delivery is the most important thing here. There's a lot of work done by people traveling and going to events and all sorts of things, but you've got to make projects happen in the end, because that's how we're really going to do business and grow our businesses. We help businesses develop their strategic direction internationally, understand the markets and new opportunities, communicate effectively, and then turn thought into action. Looking at the clarity of message, what is it that you are doing that's different to somebody else, and how is that relevant to your market, and also supporting the development of that business through new business and initiating projects, making projects happen. And our approach is strategy, plan, deliver, and turning thought into action. Our international work, although we've done some previously, our major international work started with the International Council of Shopping Centres 20 years ago, and we set out on an international development programme to focus on European developers and retailers, but promoting their expansion globally. And we worked with them in Asia, MENA, Europe, and the USA. And that really was the expansion of our network. That's how we got to develop our network and meet large groups of people. We linked that to, in each country, you've got national organisations. That's always an interesting thing that people don't think about. In each country, often there's a national organisation you can link to. So there's every country has its own shopping centre council, I can tell you. And Revo in the UK, and linked to them, and now I'm chair of the Revo Educational Trust. So my first message there would be get involved. If you do meet trade associations, get involved. They've got so many platforms and opportunities of things that you can be doing, so get involved with them. In the leisure market, with retail, it soon became fairly clear that retail was shifting to F&B. There was a lot more food and beverage coming into the market, and then leisure. And there's been a massive expansion of leisure in the shopping centre market and the retail destination market, and that's a global trend. And we started working with PlayPower, who are a big American company, but have a significant UK company called Hags, and developed soft play, and we were working with them primarily on their development in Europe, and then Hags development internationally. Gravity, many of you will know Gravity. We worked with Gravity to help them. They were a UK company, focused mainly in that kind of trampolining area when we started working with them, and we helped them expand their international network across Europe and beyond. And then currently, the Everywhere Group, and we've been developing projects with the Everywhere Group, mainly, all IP driven, and we are developing a Peppa Pig project with them at the moment, very exciting, announcements coming soon, and also a Geodesic Dome project, which has also got a number of IPs attached to that, and that's an international piece as well. What we would say is that our clients win awards. It is, we don't really put ourselves forward for awards, but our clients win awards, and that's the main thing through the work that we do with them. What I would like to say is that I'm going to start with this, because what do we look out for? What are the things that we look out for? One of the things is, I'm going to echo what everybody said about major events. It is really hugely important to go to those major events. However, it is really important to do something with them when you're there. And this is an example. There's actually Expo Real we've been going for 20 years. We've been going to MIPIM for 20 years. We've been going to MAPIC for 20 years. When we started going to IAPA, we go every year now. We're consistent. You need to be really consistent, continue to be consistent, go regularly and build your network. But also when you're there, there's masses of opportunities. These organizations have got speaking platforms, they've got media, they've got social media tags, they've got all sorts of opportunities, and you can make a huge impact by just harnessing a number of those things before you go. Really prepare for that. The other thing is have a full look at if your customers are there. Don't just go to this event because everybody else in your sector seems to go to it. Think about if your customer is there, and if your customer's there, research them and make sure you've got meetings with them when you plan to go. People are there to meet people, and they want to meet you. The other thing is take notes, because you can't remember. And I've met so many people that say, I will remember. So many people sit in meetings and don't bother getting their notebook out. So many people get into meetings and don't even get their laptop out to show people what they do, right? They just talk about it. You're there, have a meeting. You've got probably half an hour, get on with it and get your notebook out and get some next steps from that. As far as some of the obstacles, people don't do enough research and rely upon opportunistic things, opportunistic encounters. You need to do some research. You need to back up what you found out when you go into an event. There are geopolitics. I won't go into that, but those people who review that and look at that are very successful. The other thing I think is really important when selling services is getting paid. Working towards your contracts, your NDAs, protecting your IP, and working at risk. Working at risk is a big issue in this sector, and I've seen lots of it where people have spent lots of time giving clients lots of great ideas and then not getting paid for any of it, and that's no good at all. The other thing I'd say is the travel piece. I echo that from everybody else. What I would say is travel. When you travel, you're going to see a client, do some other things when you're there. Spend some extra time, go and see potential competitors, go and see other properties, go and meet some other people, get in touch with other people and say you're there and meet other people. Make lots of use of that, because that will help you determine whether that encounter that you've got, the one you've traveled for specifically, is the right one for you. And they can help you assess the market. The one top tip I had from somebody years ago was travel on public transport. It's not always possible, but travel on public transport to venues, because that's how your public are seeing it. And it'll help you understand that environment and that public more readily. I think that's enough.
Oh, that's wonderful, Julie. Thank you so much. And again, your presentation resonates so much with what we've heard before. And also, I just couldn't agree more around bringing a notepad.
Yeah,
definitely.
I know, it's so stupid. That's so silly to say, but I am a note taker, and I can't remember. I just admit it now. You know, it's not possible. I guess if you want my top tip, it's build your network long term. Be consistent and build it long term, and projects take forever. So don't give up, because you could just be on the edge of a project. I've been working on a project at the moment for 3 years, and I think this week we've got it. But it's taken a long time, and many times people would give up. Brilliant. So be consistent and keep following up and keep the faith.
Amazing, Julie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now I'm delighted to welcome welcome to the stage Steve Deering, who is Director of Strategic Partnerships from Direct Access, to share his experience of exporting professional services. So very welcome, Steve. I'm going to hand over to you.
Hello, hopefully you can all hear me. So it's good to be here. So I'm the Director for Strategic Partnership with Direct Access. But before we start, I'm a white male with glasses. I've got a beard and I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt. You might be wondering why I'm starting off my presentation by talking about my appearance. We are a disability, accessibility and inclusion consultancy. So I always start my presentation by describing what I look like for someone that has a visual impairment. If there's anyone in the audience today that has any other accessing requirement, please let us know at the end, and we'd be happy to provide a presentation in an alternative format. So let's just get straight into it. So a lot of what I'm going to say is broadly similar to the experiences of the people previously. We have been around for about 20 years. In August, we are a certified DABE, which means we're a disability-owned business enterprise. That has been quite useful to sort of certify that we do employ disabled people, which has been quite a USP for us. We have a broad client and sector base, so we do predominantly work in the entertainment and recreation industry, but we also cover everything from transportation, education, heritage, and so on. So you will be able to see on the right-hand side just our headcount, which when we started in 2004, which is 1, and it just broadly stayed at that level to 2017 when we started to look at international export, and that has really helped the company grow significantly from just having that 1 member staff to having 19 today. The +1 is actually our newest member, which I've got this lovely photo of Callie. She's a 2-year-old black Labrador. Her human is Josh, who just joined our finance team. So we've gone from, I think it's about 80,000 a year turnover to about 2 million, and now employing 19 people, almost all with a disability, and that had all been down to international growth. We now have offices in Broughton in the US, as well as outreach in Dubai in the Middle East, as well as London and in Nantwich in the Northwest. They should be very quickly. There are 2 key services that we do. One is design reviews, where we work with architectural firms and design teams on new build to make sure that anything that they've designed is accessible. The other part of what we do is a accessibility audit, which is established premises. We will go in, undertake an audit, and make recommendations on how those facilities can be improved for accessible disabled people. So, just very quickly, some of our clients. We've worked with Expo 2020 in Dubai from the initial construction stage in 2017, right up to the event itself, but also with COP28, which was held last year. Devon, Saudi Entertainment Ventures, Neil, and Dirigate, also in Saudi, and then there's been a few in the US as well. But the benefit of working with all of these is that people will move from organisation to organisation, and being able to develop that relationship has meant it's been easier to talk to other people. So let's put this into context about how we've actually delivered some of that. One of the most important things to think about is language. So understanding what people term your product or service is really essential. In the UK, we use the term disabled people, but in most other countries around the world, the correct term is people with disabilities. However, in the Middle East, and particularly in UAE, they started using people of determination. These are all English-speaking countries, but they all have slightly different ways of explaining the same thing. So, as well as following the local language, we've also looked to challenge where things have been difficult. So, on the right-hand side is words which in the UK are not accepted: handicap, wheelchair-bound, deaf and dumb, which some people have said to me without meaning offence. Where we see those, we've actually challenged those, and that given us this sort of we know what we're talking about in the eyes of some of our clients. And then on the bottom, on the left-hand side, you will probably have seen a wheelchair symbol for many different kinds of events. We actively encourage clients to think about the more dynamic one on the right, but also when they're doing images and so on, to think about not just wheelchair users, but about people with other impairments. So we understand some of the local language, but try to get people to change it as well. So English is obviously different even in English-speaking countries. So how someone, having someone who can proofread is very, very useful. So it's not just colour, fitted colour, potato, it's understanding that what you're saying explains the service that you're offering. look to localise your offer and also explain your international expertise. That can actually be quite challenging. But there's a push, particularly in the US, to buy local. So if you can sort of justify your local presence, your local staff, but also draw on your international expertise, that will work really well. We've found that when we tender for public contract in the US, that we say that right, our office is in Clearwater in Florida, we've got staff in Boston. Oh, by the way, we can draw on our international expertise in the UK, and that tends to go well. But it's the case of getting to understand your market and the approach that they take. Though the central states are much more about local and American businesses, whereas the East and West Coast are more flexible and considering international services. If you're working in a country where English is not the first or predominant language, a few words in their language goes a long way. I strongly recommend people avoid Google Translate. I actually use something called deepl.com. It doesn't cover all the languages, but it's quite a good website if you keep the sentence simple. So if you have a very long-winded statement, DeepL will struggle with that. But then it is ideal for emailed and netted. But when you come to something like a website or technical document, professional translated is the way to go, just to get everything correct. Whichever market you work in, make sure that you become the thought leader. This is just some of the things we've done. We've gone in for awards, we've won awards, we've delivered presentations, we've had high profile presentations. So the middle bottom photo is Her Excellency Wim Hashimi. He was the Minister of State for UAE, and we were able to get a photograph and put that on our social media and our marketing, which really sort of helped emphasize who we were. Then the top left and bottom right are free press, where we've written articles explaining different aspects of accessibility. That gives us a lot of credibility and make people understand that we know what we're talking about. And that helped with engagement. Right, we have made a couple of mistakes. So just to sort of illustrate these, just don't go for the glamorous option when you're thinking about where to go in terms of client and setting up. We have a UK company, but we are also registered as a separate direct actor company in Dubai and also in Florida in the US. So the important thing to remember is that you are not going out on a holiday. You are not trying to impress family or friends. What worked best for you? So in the UAE, we set up and registered in Dubai, but what we didn't realise was that in order to go for the government contract, most of the government are based in Abu Dhabi. Therefore, we needed to set up a separate trade license, a separate agreement in Abu Dhabi in order to go for those government contracts. Ironically, we get far more work in Saudi than we do in UAE, and in hindsight, it probably would have been easier for us to set up in Saudi in order to be delivering no contract. However, the whole market has sort of changed over the past 18 months. So it's a lot more flexible than it is now, but it's always worth having it up. In the US, the Florida, we set up in Clearwater, which is not far from Orlando, and card on the table. Our director wanted a holiday home in Florida, so that's why we set up. But in the past 3 years, we've never won any work there. all of our work is actually the other end, up around Boston, Vermont, New York, and up there. In the US, it actually doesn't matter where you set up because it's a different mindset to the UK. Because America's so big, they are used to having phone numbers or addresses for all different parts of the country. So they are not too worried if you're trying to deliver in Seattle and you have a Florida address. It doesn't really matter. So really, it's a case of picking in the US what's best for your work. Just to briefly touch upon the Department of International Trade and Experience UK, your international trade advisor, he or she will be your best friend. I have Veronica, our trade advisor, on call constantly, so I email her probably about every other week, simply just to keep that dialogue going, because she will recommend people to talk to or new ideas or trade missions that are coming up, and that is really, really valuable. Sometimes if we're struggling to get payment sorted, or maybe we don't understand the insurance, just being able to email the department, what is this, then I can help with that. Trade mission can be useful, which are discounted or free in quite a few cases. But what we've noted from our experience of exhibitions, that they can be a bit hit and miss. However, and we could sort of justify that because we are a service provider, so we do the audit, we do the design review. It's difficult to demonstrate that in an exhibition. So trying to do an exhibition on consultancy doesn't really work. But if you're doing product, we've seen that work. What works really, really well for us is giving presentations similar to what I'm doing today. That helps to sort of get the message across. This is what people need to think about accessibility, and this is how to do it. Then there's also funding available as well for some of that international work. So hopefully I've given you a quick overview that we've been a small organisation, less than 2 million turnover, but we've been able to make this really, really work for us, this sort of international expansion. So the last thought then I would want people to think about, we have a team of disabled people. If we can go out and get work in and be successful, what's stopping you? So here is my LinkedIn and my email, and I'll be staying towards the end if people have any questions. Thank you very much.
Amazing, Steve. Thank you so much. And I love your last provocation. I think that's absolutely wonderful. That's a great presentation. And I really enjoyed the resonance with Terry's thoughts about the importance of PR, the thought leader, to become the thought leader locally. And I really enjoyed that focus that you took on the hyper local and really understanding place, not just country, but down to individual city. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'd now love to introduce Charlie Langhorne, who is co-founder and managing director of Wild in Art, to share his experiences of his journey into international export with Wild in Art. So welcome, Charlie.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Ian. And indeed, thank you to all the other speakers. I do feel like I'm walking amongst giants with my little company, the 10 of us, mostly based in the middle of the Peak District. But Matt, I was interested to hear you're based in Smalldale because we're near neighbours. Our southern office is in Aardman, so we should perhaps meet up for a coffee one day. Just to give you a bit of a feel for the world of Wild in Art and what we do have a small show reel. So Ian, if you can run the video, that'd be fabulous. Thank you. So Ian, if we can kill that, yeah. So we create what I like to think of as big, bonkers, brilliant public art trails. The majority of our trails have been in the UK, and they've ranged from big spectaculars, so the Mascot Trail from London 2012, through to smaller trails in smaller towns and cities around the UK. But we have been actively looking at the export market. And although we always knew we wanted to get into exporting, we never really had a plan for it until we were in the fortunate position where someone saw one of our trails in the UK from Melbourne Zoo. And we had one of those great lucky break moments. We had a phone call from Melbourne Zoo going, "We're celebrating our 150th anniversary. Can you come and work with us?" And that was really our first foray into developing international markets. And I think what that taught us was that we have a product, we have an event, we have a trail that can be exported. But what we also learned is that each territory is different. And I think that's one of sort of the key things that we looked at. And we've now done about 10% of our business is overseas. So we are putting our toe in the water, but we are at an exciting time within that development. So we've done 5 events down in Australia now, similar number in New Zealand. I was delighted when I was remembered from our show reel there that looking at some of the other slides, we have taken out of that middle bit of the globe. So we have got down into run events in South Africa and Nairobi. There's nothing like putting 50 lions on the streets of Nairobi to really confuse people. It took them a while to realize that they weren't actually real lions, but it was an exciting project to do that. And we're now really looking at where we can develop our business. We'd kept out of the North American market for a while. There had been quite a number of art trails in North America, but really they were different from ours in that they weren't looking at the education program. They were purely fundraisers. And what we've realized is that the trails have a very significant economic impact as well as raising a lot of money for charity. So what we've started to do is look at how we can pivot our business to meet a local need. So instead of focusing on the charity angles of our trails, which is a lot of what we do in the UK, we are starting to focus, particularly overseas, in the economic impact of the trails, the driving footfall. Our event in Sydney, we had 50 whale tail sculptures on the streets of Sydney. There was a charity angle to it, but that wasn't the prime driver. It was really some funding was received from the New South Wales government to drive footfall following the pandemic back into the city. They approached us and we said, right, what can we do? And fortunately, we had some whale tail sculptures available, so that hired us in to do that. So it was a question of adapting our business to meet those local conditions. And certainly, the conversations we've had in China, the conversations we've had in India, we've realised that we do need to adapt what our offer is. But while adapting, still staying true to our values of creating fantastic public art trails that engage, entertain, inform, and frankly make people smile. So we've kept true to our ethos and what we want to achieve as a company, but we also realise that we need to adapt if we're going to make them relevant to local people. And actually, that relevance to local people is really, really important to what we do. So in terms of the sort of obstacles to our export journey, we produce big 3D sculptures. The majority of them are made in Poland. We have used other manufacturers from the Philippines, China, Cambodia, but price and quality, Poland is the place to go. So we do have shipping issues, and the crazy prices for shipping really had a massive impact on us. And then things like shipping delays, meant to be 44 days to ship a container from Poland to New Zealand. It then becomes 80 days, 90 days, and then 110 days. So that really did have an impact on us, and it's completely out of our control. But we were in the fortunate position that we could flip our manufacturing and then have them made more locally. That then resulted in us having far too many whale tails in New Zealand, but we then have a very lucky break that we could then sell those into Sydney. So I think the sort of that story is being adaptable and also riding those lucky breaks. I mean, absolutely you need a plan, absolutely you need the trade shows, absolutely you need to take notes. By the way, I'm taking note of that, Julie, because I'm useless at taking notes, but I will try and do better. But actually, it's just being able to adapt, seeing an opportunity and getting on with it. And I think as a small company, one of the things that I pride Wild and Art with is we are flexible. We're again a very fortunate position. We had a call from Leica Studios, who produced the film Coraline, They had been trying to find someone to create a public art trail for them for about 6 months. They'd scoured the US and they couldn't find it. And then they picked up the phone to us and said, all roads seem to lead back to you guys. And absolutely what previous speakers said, you've got to get out there. I was there about a week later, came back with the agreement. You have to get out there. I think that's so important. There's so much can be done, but nothing like sitting down, looking to the whites of the eyes of someone and going, yeah, we can do business together. And I think that's such an important thing. So it's riding those lucky breaks, adapting to local, shamelessly talk to everybody. And if you can carry your product, do carry your product with you. Yes, I did take a 70 centimetre tall baby elephant sculpture on a flight to New Zealand with me. Yes, Emirates did lose it. So I did have that strange conversation. You have lost my elephant. Really, sir? Yes, you have. But it gave us the opportunity to talk to Emirates in New Zealand. It got us talking to Christchurch Airport, and then Christchurch Airport became one of our sponsors, so I went down there. So do talk to everybody. Use the Department of Business Trade contacts. I found sometimes they are useful just for information. Sometimes I find it just really useful to say to someone, oh, I've just met with the government. And that can be, in some markets, that can be a really exciting thing. And also work with others in the industry. I know Ngaio's here. We have a great relationship with Aardman. For my little company, we are immensely proud of that relationship. And we've done a lot of work together. We've got other things bubbling away. So we're a friendly we're a friendly industry. I mean, we make people smile. So let's help each other out as well and smile. So I think really my top tips are shamelessly talk to everybody, enjoy it, get out there and see it. And Emily, just in case you asked me that question, you asked everyone else, my final thing is openness. Be open to new relationships, open to receiving help, open to new ideas, and open to helping each other.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Charlie. What a brilliant presentation, and again, so much resonance with other colleagues. I think I heard a lot about well, obviously being open, talking to everybody, which has a very lot of resonance with, particularly with what Julie Ngaio was saying, and also Matt's comments about the logistics side of things. Being mindful of the difficulties with shipping and how that might play out in your business plan. So all really, really helpful. Thank you so much, and it's great to meet you. And I do also endorse what you say about our sector. I mean, we do great stuff. We're really lucky. We do the fun things and bring joy to people. So I think it's great to remember that. Thank you. And now, last but definitely not least, my dear friend and former colleague, Jim Broughton, who is an arts and cultural consultant with a great deal of experience across the world, delivering incredibly complex cultural projects. So I'm going to leave Jim to talk about his experience and expertise, but over to you, Jim. Thank you so much for joining us on this panel.
Thanks, Emily, and hi, everybody. I'm feeling I kind of now follow that kind of vibe, given that's what always happens when you're the last person up. I'm wondering what else or what new to say. So I thought I'd approach this as an independent, thinking about less about practical things and more about mindset things. So if you'll indulge me, that's what I'll aim to do for the next 10 minutes or so. As Emily mentioned, I've done various things over the course of my career, almost entirely related to international partnerships and capital projects in the museums and heritage sectors. And I've often done those things within organisations whose goals are not primarily commercial. Their goals are cultural, or they're engagement based, or they're brand and advocacy based, but they still need that work to pay. And there's just a summary here on perhaps some of the places I've been in my career and the different lenses on the cultural sector that I've been able to bring. So in different organisations, I've either had to look at it from the perspective of art or natural heritage or built heritage or material culture or science or even attractions. And they variously come with different business models attached as well. I'm currently a freelancer, but I've worked in the charitable sector and government agencies or institutions or the commercial sector as well. But all of that bandwidth sits around something that I think is a conundrum for the cultural sector when we're looking at international trade. it's a sector that primarily buys competitively. It loves open public procurement. It loves partnerships, and it hates being sold to. But nevertheless, that doesn't mean we can't do business. And I just wanted to give 3 or 4 snapshots of different types of configurations and projects from across my 20 odd years that speak to different variables there. So this is something I was involved in 20 odd years ago in Hong Kong, where I worked for a charitable organisation who kept their capital project team together after the millennium to work in a joint venture with a UK-based exhibition designer, essentially over 6 years, to master plan and design and create a vast new visitor attraction. So in that configuration, we had a public sector client, a charitable consultancy, a commercial partner doing mission-driven work that nevertheless generated revenue. So it's an interesting dynamic, well, beyond the purely corporate. To take another example, a project that many of you will have seen because it's been running for many, many years now, the Zayed National Museum, new national museum in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi. I was the project director at the British Museum for the first few years of that project's establishment. And that really was about UK PLC working with the FCO, as was then UKTI, to essentially negotiate a long-term framework agreement to assist what was then a commercial client, a state-owned developer, with putting in place the physical infrastructure for something that would become, over the fullness of time, beyond the capital period, a new national institution. And a whole range of things took place then: strategic planning, building specification, curation, all the things that are on the screen there. Ultimately, it was still a piece of consultancy that generated revenue, but the shell was the British Museum as the entity around it. So that's another way in which it might work. On a much smaller scale, a lot of the stuff that UK institutions and smaller charitable agencies are involved in are funded by bodies that we know well, like people like the British Council. This is a piece of work that I was doing in 2007, 2008 in Sudan, working on the post-Civil War recovery plan for the National Museum. And this was all about the softer outcomes that the expertise in the UK experience economy could deliver, and particularly in that case, the British Museum is a convener of all of these things. So quite a modest programme over 3 years, covering support with organisational functions, collections care, all of those things, helping an organisation dust itself down and prepare itself to reactivate. So the outcome of this project, although it was done on a kind of cost recovery basis, it didn't make net income for everybody. A huge amount of outcome for the wider UK experience economy and for, I suppose, the UK in soft power and cultural diplomacy outcomes by working in its embedded way through a third party. And the last one I'll show you, a very recent piece of work from the agency I was with until recently, Events, the Museum Planning and Design Consultancy, working in Singapore with the Science Centre there on a 6-month consultancy study to help them develop a visitor experience master plan through a series of workshops and iterations to prepare them for a vast new building campus that Zaha Hadid Associates from London were designing for them. And this was really an interesting thing because although we were a commercial consultancy and they were an institutional client and it was public procurement and they knew that they were buying something from us as a service, our expertise and our experience was not there in Singapore. They were buying from the international market. We had to think very carefully about how we could build a compelling offer for them. And it was about leverage of the prior relationships with that architect who we worked with numerous times, people we knew in the institution, finding a local partner in Singapore who could represent our interests in country and can provide all the kind of softer understandings that we needed to be effective in that role. So again, another way in which it might work. And I suppose if I was going to draw any things from this in terms of kind of the common mindset that I see kind of making these successful kinds of collaborations work, I'll put it around 3 themes. The first of those is knowing which hat to wear. And I think it's a really important thing because we often think we know what we're going to do when we go somewhere. But what we can't legislate for is the second kind of party in that equation. What we might do might not be what we're expected to be when we walk into a room. And I always find myself kind of going through this internal monologue. Who am I today when I go into this meeting and meet this individual? Am I myself, Jim? Am I my expertise? Am I a person who plans and develops museums? Am I the company that I'm with? Am I the industry and that I'm within, and the sector that I'm in, or am I part of the UK export effort? And I think all of us, especially when working with organisations like DBT and Experience UK, will have found ourselves having to pivot in those kinds of ways. And I think a deep breath and a quick check before any kind of interlocution is really, really important, so we can be as effective and as trusted as possible. The second theme is really about gauging expectations. And again, I think for cultural work, this often comes up. Somebody already mentioned this afternoon about the power of building a personal rapport. Now, of course, going to be with somebody, being in their space, receiving their hospitality, sitting across the table from them, breaking bread with them is so important in so many parts of the world. We can't just do what we do internationally on Zoom and Teams. I think also in certain parts of the world, exporting in certain kinds of markets, because we come from a developed market in the global north. If we're working with developing world organisations in the global south, generally, we have to deal with that trade versus aid conundrum. And I think it's a difficult one, but ensuring that the fact that we need to charge a fee for what we do, for professional services or the goods that we provide, is a necessary part of our economic dynamic, and that we're not just there to be philanthropists. I think it's a really important one. And sometimes we might run into those situations where people expect us to do what we do for free. Nevertheless, I think there is still, when this is part of the building rapport situation, a need sometimes for us to demonstrate our value up front. So a way in which that we, particularly going into contexts where we might have buyers who have not worked with organisations or companies like ourselves before, worked examples of how we do what we do to demonstrate why it's worth money that needs to be paid for it are so important. And lastly, on that note, the whole set of issues that come up around cash flow and completion risk, again, in particularly new markets or fast-moving markets. We see lots of capital projects in certain parts of the world that go in fits and starts, and of course, sometimes that's about clients finding out, the realism, what it takes to develop something large and ambitious. But of course, there's a whole supply chain of people stacked behind that who rely on that cash flow, particularly companies like ourselves who are invariably SMEs who live from one contract to the next. So I think really getting a proper measure on that is important. The third theme, I think, is about defining the challenge. And I always say home rules don't apply. The fact that we do something in a certain way in our context is not always the right way. In fact, sometimes people don't even want to hear that. What they want to understand is that we can distill what we know and what we've experienced and the kind of, I suppose, the intellectual capital we have in our kind of collective experience, and rebuild that from first principles for their context. So it's not how we do it, it's how we do, why we do what we do, and how we might rebuild it like a Lego kit almost for a different context. I also want to talk about operator versus developer mindsets, and I think this is something very important for capital projects as well. The people who are building a thing are not going to be the people who are running a thing, almost inevitably not. But I think that what that also means is that it can come with a whole set of misleading labels around things, and we cannot get distracted by those. And those of you who are working a lot in the Middle East will have heard the phrase cultural asset many times, a developer label for building something on a plot of land. Of course, the cultural sector doesn't work like that. It's not the way it works. The physical facilities for cultural organisations are just tools in which they can do what they do. But we always need to think beyond that and think about the fact that much of the work that we're doing, particularly in the museums and heritage world, is investing in the apparatus of civil society for the longer term. And once those developers are out of the way, it's the operators who over the coming generation will benefit from the work that we're doing now. And straddling that divide, I think, is really important. It's that whole thing about thinking long term. So I know they're kind of abstract things rather than practical things. I just wanted to close with one thing, which I think is another thing that I try to hang on to in the frustration sometimes of international working. And that's just find the fascination. Everywhere in the world is interesting if you know how to look. Even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're stuck in a meeting and you're jet lagged and you're kind of being faced by a fairly combative macho kind of capital projects person, Everything else about it, about those situations, is interesting. I find that fascinating. This is what I think what drives global trade, global collaborations, global partnerships. That's it for me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jim. What a thought-provoking and fantastic presentation to close out on. And I particularly found it's very thought-provoking to think of what hat to wear as a pathological oversharer. I think that's a really helpful kind of starting point for going into a new engagement in a new country. So I appreciated that. And gauging the expectations on the project. You know, I think you brought out the complexity of what it means to work in the cultural and heritage space where there might not necessarily be those commercial drivers front and foremost. And I also heard a lot of resonance with Steve's presentation in terms of kind of really fully gauging and understanding the cultural context for your work. So thank you very much. Right, now I think we are now kind of, we've got three or so minutes for a few questions, and I'm going to pick out a couple of questions that have come in already. So the first one, taking us back to where we began with Terry Monkton. It's a question from Samuel Kirk asking Terry, how do you protect your IP in markets where it can be copied and potentially prices undercut? I think that's a very good question. Terry, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there are markets I would suggest, China, where we've had quite a good amount of success there, and I think we've had some quite a reasonable amount of fails, to be honest with you, where we've spent time on potential opportunities, given concepts, proposals, and then sort of the client's very keen, you build a relationship and you think you're going to get an order, then you find out 18 months later they just took your designs to a local company and got a far inferior quality attraction done that maybe they got for half price. The key thing is don't beat yourself up about it. I'll either win that order or I won't. And we've changed our strategy to China somewhat now. Every opportunity goes through a really quite diligent qualification process. And to progress that opportunity, they have to get to a certain score. We have lots of patents. And they're protected in key territories like Europe, North America, etc. Unfortunately, China is one of those countries where a little bit of a different approach to other companies' patents. And I'm afraid that best advice I can give you is just don't beat yourself about it. If you're going to win it because of your company, your pricing, or you won't. And that's really the best advice I can give you about it. I was years ago, I used to get really stressed about it. I just totally changed my approach to it all. And there's not a fat lot you can do. We've tried to challenge companies in China. We had one success, then tried others that were not successful. And then, as I say, changed our approach. So not a scientific one, I'm afraid, but one that we use nonetheless.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much, Terry. Did anybody else have any resonances in terms of those questions? I know. Oh, Matt, yes, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say the way we've approached IP protection in countries where you really can't rely on a patent is stay ahead of the game. It takes time to copy you. So as long as you're still developing, by the time they've copied what you did, you should be further ahead of the game. And that's the best advice I'd have on how to protect your IP is always stay 1 foot forward.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Julie, did you have anything? I know you commented in the chat at the time on IP protection. Did you have anything to mention?
No, I think I would echo really what everybody was saying. But I think that last point also about keeping moving, because you're always, you know, really, if they're copying it and it's that way, they weren't the right customer for these people sitting on this call. So it is important to qualify what you're doing, and I like that idea of a scorecard. You know, sort of saying, do they reach that score? Is this the right client for us? You know, don't go for everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all very, very, very helpful. Thank you so much. Now, there's a question in from Keith Thomas, which is around experience that the panel might have in overcoming major barriers to trade with countries where tariffs and taxation issues can make that particularly tough. Now, before I open that up, I wonder whether Ian, that we had a really good webinar a while back from our currencies partner, Currencies Direct, and I don't know whether you could put a link to that that webinar in the chat, Ian, because I think that might be quite useful for the person who asked this question. But let's ask the panel also. So any kind of comments on overcoming issues around tariffs and taxation in international trade, Jim?
Well, a couple of them. I think one thing, which is kind of a very practical thing, is in countries where there's not a free trade agreement. Of course, one can technically get withholding taxes back. The process of doing so is often more trouble than it's worth, and I think it's often prudent to just price in the risk of the withholding tax on the assumption you won't get it back, and I think that's a practical step lots of us can take. That's the first thought. The second one is, places as closed currencies or where international payment terms are hard, partnering with somebody domestic, particularly if they're a multinational, is the way to go, and the way you make sure you get your money.
Thank you so much. And did anybody else have any comments on managing tariffs and taxes here in the meeting? Okay, so I see that Claire is typing. I expect that she's probably adding the link to that webinar that Currencies directed. So hold fire. So, oh yes, Claire. Claire's just offering to help anybody who wants to learn more about Experience UK. I think unless there are any other questions that have come in, we have probably covered everything. Without further ado, I think I will kind of come. Oh no, Patrick. Sorry, Patrick. Looks like Patrick is coming in with a question. Let's just hold on. Let's just give one last chance if Patrick is still typing. No, Patrick has stopped typing. Okay, so I'm going to close now. Thank our amazing panel for their generosity in sharing their thoughts and perspectives and experience with us all today. So thank you to Terry Monkton, CEO of Simworx, Matt Barton, Chairperson and owner of Seventh Sense, Ngaio Harding-Hill, Head of Attractions and Live Experiences from Aardman, Julie Fizsimmins, Founder and Director of Lodestar, Steve Deering, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Direct Access, Charlie Langhorne, Co-Founder and Managing Director of Wild in Art, and Jim Broughton, Culture and Heritage Consultant. Thank you from Experience UK for joining us. If you want to know more about Experience UK, you can contact Claire on the email in the chat. And we hope to see you at the next webinar. Thank you all very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.